I got nothing else. So I'm ready to rock.
No, I think we're good. Let's hit the next one, man.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to say this as enunciate this as best as I can because it could be easily misheard. My topic is tipless bars and restaurants. Tipless. With a P.
Did you say tit?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of studies have been coming out recently about the new phenomenon and movement to have bars and restaurant owners are moving away from tip-based income for their employees. So waiters, food runners, busboys, bartenders, they historically have earned their money from the tips of the people that they serve, and that has pros and that has cons. As a pro,
big time.
You can definitely rack up a ton of money, and it could be really great if someone is feeling generous. As a con, you
Get screwed.
You could be screwed because it could not be busy that day, and you might not get anything. Or someone doesn't know how to tip 15%, 20% math, and they give you a shitty tip. Or they had a bad experience with the maitre d' or the hostess, and they take that out on you by not giving you a tip. Or something out of control calls them, or they're just a dick, or they're old and they don't tip, and so you don't get a tip, right? So that has its cons. And then, tips also are subject to taxes, and so that, while seems really great, could kind of hinder you too. It's just an odd way to do it. It's like a lot of weird math. So it's not guaranteed money, but you can also have really large spikes of good money. It also, the other con I would suggest, which is also a pro, it's weird depending on what side you're on, is that the crew on Friday and Saturday traditionally are going to be making the more tips than the crew who's on Monday and Tuesday. And usually the crew that's on Monday and Tuesday are the new guys, the people who are not so good. And then if you get those days, that sucks. But if you're paid hourly, it's steady income. It's not as spiky, so it's less risk reward. But it's steady, and Monday is the same as Saturday, right?
Well, and did you ever work in like the restaurant industry and everything? Were you a server? Or?
I worked in the restaurant industry from the age of 12 years old to about 23. 22.
Okay, great.
I was a busboy to a food runner to a waiter. What else did I do? That's pretty much it. I worked in an Italian mom and pop shop, an Irish pub, and a Japanese restaurant.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, my background, I started out as a cook at restaurants, and then I became a bar back and busser, and then became a bartender. And I did it for probably about 15 to 28. So, with you and I having so much experience in the industry, you can make a lot of money, but like you said, it could hurt some nights, And what other things that kind of happen is people can have a bad experience with the food that you don't even have any kind of control over. Like,
Yep.
Your kitchen taking too long to create the food. It's like, hey, what the hell are you guys doing back here? And to them, the cooks and everyone, they're hourly. They don't get tips or anything of that sort. So to them, yeah, they want to keep their job. They want to sit there and provide good food, but things get backed up. And me being a cook back then, you're sitting there trying to do stuff, and yeah, you get busy and everything, and things back up, and then you have the server yelling at you. So I had like different ends of the spectrum. I can understand what happens with the kitchen, but they sit there and they send out a bad product. It's the server that suffers,
Right.
and that's what sucks. So going to like a tipless style, I think it's a good idea, but I think still to incorporate a tip if someone goes that extra mile.
Yep.
Agreed. I've provided excellent service, and I've had it. So being in that industry, and when I go out to eat or something of that sort, and I notice that person is doing like an extra step to really make my experience well, I'll over tip. But if we go towards a tipless, maybe leaving like 2 or 3%, and they're still getting hourly, I think that's a good style right there.
Yeah.
And then if you feel like you got crappy service, you just don't tip at all.
Right.
But they still get their hourly. So I think it's a good idea. Do I think it's going to kind of overtake at least the U.S.? I don't think so. I think we're so heavily into that system already that it's like second nature to people.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say about going tipless, which I bring it up because Seattle and San Francisco, more bars and restaurants are moving towards this new thing, at least testing it out, and it has a lot to do with the connection to the $15 minimum wage hike.
Right.
But the other thing that I think adds to it is that when you are not fighting tooth and nail for a tip, you are now theoretically, pooled is the term they use in the restaurant business. You are pooled in with everybody else. Everybody else is making the same amount of money. So it is now in your best interest to not necessarily shark your table specifically for the most money that you can rake out of them, but to make your job and other people's jobs as easy as possible, right? Now it becomes about, well, look, I want to help Ian because he's in the weeds, aka he's really, really busy, and he just got slammed with 5 tables at a time, and he's just backed up because you can't be at 5 places at once. You have to go in order, and unfortunately, the last table is going to be a little bit more pissed off that their shit's like they're getting attended to fifth in order, which could be anywhere between 10, 15 minutes, right? Because 2-3 minutes per table that you have to get, right? So if you're in the weeds, it's in my best interest to help you to ease the pressure off you because you're
going to make more money.
Well, we're all making the same amount of money. You might get tipped a little bit more, but when I'm in the weeds, I want someone to scratch my back, right? And so if you're, if I release the pressure off you, you can release the pressure off me. Like we can work as a more cohesive team. And it's not, every man for himself kind of mentality or culture that you normally would get in a very, tip-based, non-pooled restaurant or bar.
Well, on the other end of the spectrum, you're working, you're making the same amount of money. Why do I want to go make myself more busy at work and help you out when I'm still only making, we'll just give round numbers, $10 an hour. I don't want to get all crazy and busy. I just want a relaxed night.
Yep.
So I'm not going to go help him. I'm just going to take care of what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's the other end of the spectrum. It's a tough thing there.
I think then you get fired. I think people are like, look, this guy's not helping us out. You know what I mean? And normally you might have an excuse. Maybe, I don't know. I might be grasping at straws here, but you might just be like, look, I'm going to have tables here. This is your job. That's your section. This is my section. I'm in charge. There's a little bit more of a cultural divide in that workspace when you are fighting for your own tips. And that's not to say that that's always the case. I'm sure there are there are restaurants where it's no, even if I'm not busy, I'll go over and I'll help that person regardless because if they get more tips, they'll help me too. So that still is there. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just feel like it's got more of a perception of a team base when everybody's making the same amount of money and you don't have to worry about getting the tips. I guess I don't know.
Right, and I agree with you there. And being in the industry, you just have those people. Well, previously being in the industry, that even when you could make more money picking up a table, they wouldn't do it. They're just not a team-based player, and it does suck. It just, unfortunately, that's how some people, I believe, think. They're like, I don't want a busy night, so screw that. Yeah. I'm good. And yeah, you would think that they'd be fired, but I mean, there was a lot of people in that industry that I thought should have been fired from day one, and they still stuck around for a year or two. It's ridiculous sometimes, and it's a tough industry. I mean, you're literally trying to take care of the client while making things happen. It is such multitasking. People do not appreciate it sometimes.
Yeah.
And I don't like to complain when I go out unless it's really terrible, and I like to reward the people that I believe are doing a great job, or having a great job, and
yeah, have a great job, everyone.
That's right. But then the other end of the spectrum, if you're all making the same money, why would you want to serve? I'd just rather just bus or something of that sort. So you'd have to then say...
No, a waiter would make more money than a bus.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. So you'd have to sit there and go, okay, well, this gets paid this and da-da-da-da. I did love bartending. That was some of the greatest experiences I ever had. So... You would still then, would bartenders make more than a waiter?
I would imagine.
Okay.
Yeah. What's interesting, what I'm finding here is that, so a lot of these restaurants there's some that have tried it and gone back. It's tricky, right? And each restaurant's different, but most of them, surprisingly, have a 20% service charge, flat 20% service charge, and that's the generated income there.
Okay.
You don't tip; it's just a part of it, right? So that I find fascinating because I would think that it would be 18% at most, because that's in between, like somewhat in between the 15 traditionally, and then 20%. But yeah, there are a lot of them are at 20% that I'm seeing here, and there have been complaints, like this one story about how a customer had complained that you don't even, like, in this process, what a lot of people are doing are just giving you the check with the service charge of 20%, and then just basically you're signing, right?
Right.
People actually complain because if they wanted to increase that tip even more, because if someone, like, they don't have the opportunity,
Right.
So that's tricky too, because for some people that's great because they had a great experience, they want to actually give more. But for other people, it might come off as like, hey, here's your service charge, and if you want, and it's almost suggestive, like you should be tipping on top of the 20%, which can come off as offensive, or it's like a little bit too pushy. So you could take it the wrong way, right, depending on the person. So I just find that fascinating that this is something new. This is something that people are trying, but there's a lot of pitfalls ahead of them, and they're still trying to figure it out, right?
Well, and how do you present that? Do you
Right.
have a big old sign when you first walk in,
Oh,
like, "Hey,
right.
this is a tipless bar" or something, or
Yeah.
is it right on the check?
Right.
Okay, but 90% of people, they get their receipt and they just see two lines and they do that. They don't really read everything else sometimes. I mean, you might look at line items, but you're not going to read the bottom of it or something of that sort. So you really have to, like, make it jump out at people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
then
like the
the only
waiters have to tell the people, like, remember, like, tips included, so don't worry, like, yeah,
right.
for sure. It's gonna be, it's an interesting transition, to say the least, right? I'm kind of for it. I think, I don't know, man.
And see that this would be a good time, I guess, for Alan. So in Canada, they pay their waiters and waitresses, right?
Yeah.
They're not tipped.
Yeah.
Okay, now up there, I've never been to Canada. Have you?
Yeah, I visited
Okay.
them a couple times.
Now, have you going out? Is there still lines to be able to tip them, or
I mean, you can always give. I don't remember. I know that if you wanted to, you can always drop cash. You can always drop cash, right? But you don't really tip, and that's okay.
Well, and I'll tell you my background. Where I bartended was in downtown Tampa, across the street from where the Tampa Bay Lightning, their stadium.
Yeah.
And of course, hockey is a very big. It's huge in Canada. So when you'd play a Canadian team, that's actually some of the busiest nights where I'd make the least amount of money, and it was terrible. Because a lot of people coming down, they're so used to not tipping, and I would sit there and get slammed for like 2-3 hours straight and make like a quarter of what I normally make, and it sucks and it's terrible.
Yeah.
And those nights you dreaded them, and it's unfortunate. Now, granted, like some people would sit there and say, "Oh, hey, thank you so much," or very polite and everything, and then tip you maybe 10%, maybe 5%. And at the end of the night, you got to think of the other end of the spectrum, is that you have to then tip out of what you make to your barbacks and bussers and all that stuff. So it's like, I didn't make shit tonight, and now I have to give part of this to someone else because they need to make their money. So, and at that point, it's like literally splitting hairs and trying to divvy up a small pool of money for a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it was tough. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. You're sitting there I was at a sports bar and restaurant, and you'd have literally around the whole bar 10 people deep, and you're like, okay, I'm maybe gonna make $50 tonight. And as a bartender, that's terrible.
Yeah.
I mean,
Bartenders make around like 500, right?
Oh, there was my best night ever was I made $1,000.
Yeah. They can. So the sky's the limit. But what I'm reading here is that, like, they've compared basically these restaurants that have gone to a tipless style compared to a traditional style, and the differences between because you can argue, okay, if you like because everything is included,
Right.
including tax on the menu. You would think that the menu items would be a lot higher than traditional menu items, but they're actually not that much higher, is what they're finding in terms of this, like, one restaurant, for example. And then what they found is that because it's a little bit more steady, because you know that it's 20% on top of everything. Like some people are not going to just not tip you. Some people are not going to just give you 10% or 15%. They're going to give you 20% because that's part of it. You actually can do things like employee benefits and employee profit sharing. And so like those are some of the hidden pros that some people don't think about when you like. Because Ian, I agree with you. That one night that you got 1,000, you're like, man, like it's almost a phenomenon of like wanting to win the lottery, right?
I busted my ass that night, but at the end of the night, I was like, "Whoa, I've never done this."
But when someone, it's just like going to win the lottery or playing like Las Vegas or like going to the casino. It's like, man, you have the potential to win so much money. So yeah, you put as much as you want. But if I was like, okay, I'm actually gonna cap it for your own good. I'm gonna like keep you at this price point, and maybe you won't see the spikes as often. But because it's consistent over the long term, you're going to actually make more and benefit more, especially when the fact that I can put profit sharing and I can put benefits on top of it because it's so steady. I now can I can predict it a lot better, right? It's less volatile. And so now all of a sudden, like, it's not as tangible, but it can potentially be a lot better than, okay, you had the one night that was really like exhilarating and you got your adrenaline running because you got 1,000, right?
Well, and that's great because I never once had health insurance when I was in the restaurant industry. Yeah. So it's like you get injured, you're like, wait, A, I can't work, and B, I can't even like go to the doctor or I'm gonna pay out a bunch of money. So that's, I think, one of the biggest things is that if that's the ability that you can get some benefits out of it, for sure, like let's do it. But I just think it's going to be a pretty tough transition because A, you really got to get a lot of places on board to do that. And not only that, B, is it going to hurt like the smaller establishments to do that? Because maybe people don't go out as much because, I mean, granted, when you look at that number in a menu, it's going to be a lot less than you said that it doesn't change too much.
They said, they said that they only saw like maybe $1 or $2 change. And that's okay. I don't think that's too bad.
Well, because you just got to bring that into the cost of the items if you really think about it. So, I think it might be a very good idea. I just think it's going to be a tough transition.
I mean, we're smart guys. We can do this. If a soup is traditionally $4, and all you're doing is adding 20% onto everything to make up for a 20% service charge at the total end of the bill, right? I mean, that could kind of work that way. 20% of $4 is what?
$85.95.
What? Of $4?
I'm kidding.
I was like, I didn't say 40, or 400. You got me. Okay, 20% of $4 is like almost $1, right?
Yeah,
it's like 80 cents. Okay, so $4. Okay, you roll that up to so what was a soup is now $5. Big deal.
Yeah, exactly, and then at the end you don't have to feel like, oh well, if I only tip them 15%, will they get mad? Or
that's what people are thinking.
I'm a regular here, like, because honestly, I have a place I go to all the time. Shout out Beefs. So and I feel obligated sometimes that I have to tip well, and not only that, like being in the industry and everyone knows that, it's like, okay, if I tip 20%, that's like a regular for them, you know, and you get that like little built up, like, what do I have to tip? And I always ask my wife. Now the thing is that my wife is over generous with tipping. She thinks that if you go out for lunch, no matter what the bill is, you have to at least leave $5. I was like, that's not the case. That's not the case.
I did that with haircuts.
Really?
Yeah.
I still do that with haircuts, actually.
But I always would give $5 or like $7. But are we talking like $2 meals? Like, what are we?
Like, okay, if she went out and got a salad somewhere and like in a water, and her bill is $8, she would leave $5. I'm like, what the fuck?
Right.
Like, I understand.
You can leave $2.
Right. And at that point, okay, you got a salad and a water, and that's it. And you know, your bill is, we'll just say $7. Yeah, 2, maybe 3. Granted, that's still like
that's
a hefty percentage, but
that's like 150%, right?
3 on 7? No, that's 50% ish.
No,
just below 50.
Well, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but yeah, if she's leaving 5, I'm like, okay, I understand that you're trying to be nice and generous, but think about this. If you do that every other day, you're spending a shit ton of money just for lunch. That's $13, $15 sometimes.
That's a really good point.
You know? But that argument, she still argues with me to this day about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll remember that. That's good.
Mhm.